This conference will now be recorded.
Still a couple minutes early, but
Yeah, well, I think we got everybody, but I'll wait till 6:30.
We do not have Jubin.
Okay.
Candy, is Tava coming too? Did he get the link? Or no?
I asked Michael to let him know, and he said he would, but he said he likely wouldn't come.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, this is the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Mid-Peninsula Water District. President Schmidt,
Here.
Vice President Wheeler,
Here.
Director Vella,
Here.
Director Zuka,
Here.
Director Mostasisa.
Here.
We have a quorum. District Council, General Manager, Operations Manager, and District Secretary are present.
Great. Thank you, Candy. Move on to item number 2, public comment. Do we have anybody for public comment?
We didn't receive any written comments, and I don't see anybody here from the public, Brian.
Okay. Per usual, Tammy, if you can let me know if anybody shows up.
I will do that.
Great. Thanks.
District Engineer is also here.
Okay. Thank you, Judith. All right, on to item number 3, agenda review, additions, deletions, and pulled consent items. You could just have a comment or a question on consent. Let's save it for consent. If you want to pull any consent, why don't we go ahead and do that now? Does anybody want to make changes?
Brian,
Yes.
if I may, on the agenda, can we, if that's okay, can we do item 7G? We'll replace that where item 7E is now. We'll replace G with E.
You want to switch the order of the two?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. That's all. The only reason is because item E was discussed at BAUSCA, and when I'm doing my report, I could just talk a little bit about it, and then we'll get to item E for ourselves. That's all.
Okay. Assuming no objections, we will go ahead and do that.
Yeah, it shouldn't make any difference. But yeah, if you could do that, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay. And hopefully I will remember it when we get to that item. You can remind me if I don't. Anything else?
This is Candy. On page 11, line 371, Kathy mentioned or let us know that on, or 372, excuse me, that she was elected to the school board in 2003 and not 2013. So we'll make that adjustment.
Okay. Thank you, Candy. All right. Let's move on to item number 4 then, acknowledgements and presentations.
Okay, this is our service anniversary recognition for Tava Matele. He is a maintenance technician here with the district, and he's been here for 15 years. And so we start at the 10 years. I think we've even come to you with 5 years. We usually do them in 5-year increments here within the district. So he has been on board since then. Tava works closely with the crews that are supervised by Michael Anderson. And then I was going to see if Rena had some things that he wanted to share about Tava.
Yeah. So Tava is another one of our employees who, in my opinion, just a long-term employee. We have a lot of people who've been here a number of years. And if you talk to his supervisor, Michael, he'll tell you that Tava is one of the guys he leans on when it comes to doing, asphalt work and concrete work. We have to go make repairs after a water line repair. We've got to go fix a street, to go fix a sidewalk in front of somebody's house. He's just got a natural talent for that. And here recently, for I'm not sure what kind of reasons, but over the past week, he's been the donut man. He's brought in boxes of donuts for the guys out in the shop, and we bring them in here too. So I don't know, maybe he's picked up a sweet tooth along the way, or maybe he's celebrating this 15th year anniversary with us in another fashion. But I mean, we're proud to have Tava working with us. He tries just as hard as all the other folks out in the field to provide good service to the community that we serve here. And glad to see him here 15 years and hope he's got another 10, 15 years left in him.
I think we hope we all have another 10 or 15 years left in us.
Yeah.
So I don't think Tava's here tonight. Is that right?
He is not, no.
He's not.
Okay. Well, very happy to hear about all his great work, and please pass on the congratulations from the board.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
Yes, just a quick comment, because I remember very well when Tava was hired, and I cannot believe that it has been 15 years. So it went so fast. So to your comment, I hope we do have another 15 years. I don't know, but but I do remember I wish he was here, because one thing that I wanted to remind him was that where I used to work, there were a couple of people that came from the islands, we call them, because that's where Tava comes from. Mm-hmm. And it was very funny when I was mentioning names. Everybody that I mentioned, he goes like, "Oh, that's my cousin." And then I mentioned one, "Oh, that's my cousin." Just, everybody's your cousin. So that's what I remember with Tava. Great guy. What a nice personality. Really, really nice. I wish he was here, because I said the same thing if he was here. Great guy. He's a true asset to our organization. So that's it. Congratulations, Tava.
Yeah.
Thank y'all. We'll share those with him.
All right. Thanks. Let's move on to consent agenda. So does anyone have any questions or comments for items on the consent agenda? And if not, someone who want to make a motion to approve?
I so move.
Second.
Okay. Can we do a roll call, please?
Yeah. Director Vella,
Yes.
Vice President Wheeler,
Yes.
Director Zuka,
Yes.
Director Mosa Sisa,
Yes.
President Schmidt.
Yes.
And actually, Brian, before we move on, just real quick, I just want to say these are probably the most verbose minutes I've seen us write in quite some time. I have no objection to that. It's sort of the board decision. This has gone up and down and up and down over the years that I've been here. And I guess I will just toss out there for general consideration. I don't know if it's okay to discuss tonight whether that amount of documentation is actually necessary, whether staff feels it's been given direction that it needs this level of documentation, but they've gotten a lot longer in the last couple of years. And this
I am glad you brought it up, Matt. The only reason this set is this long is because there were 3 important events that we thought, first of all, the public hearing has to be documented for the Urban Water Management Plan and Water Shortage Contingency Plan. And then because of the new appointment of a board member, okay, and then Dave's resignation. Those are the only reason these minutes are that verbose, I promise you. We are happy with trying to keep them down to the 4-page
And I'm
process.
happy not to read everything that everybody said all over again because I
No,
attended the meeting. But
no.
if we think we need to document it, that's fine. I just wanted
You
to
know
see it.
me, I would love to just have action only minutes, quite frankly. And
Okay.
we can just maybe put the recording out on the website for people who miss it. But yes, you won't see this long length of minutes anymore. It's just those 3 items that we want to
It was
document.
just a comment that, in case. So that's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Were there other follow-up comments?
I appreciate the short minutes. However, I have to concur with the general manager for this one time. I appreciated the additional information. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Kathy, did you have a comment?
Yeah, my only comment was I was blown away at how detailed the minutes were. It's more than I've seen. So I appreciate Tammy explaining that it was for this one particular meeting, because I don't think it's necessary, and just my opinion, to have it be so detailed. I think there's a lot of work for staff, and so I'm trying to be cognizant and respectful of time.
Okay. I kind of liked it myself, but it's fine going back to what we had before.
Yeah, I think now that we have, if we have now, or if we have in the future, the video recording, if people need the detail will be available. Obviously the in-person meeting question will come up. Anyway, certainly a topic for consideration.
And since Tammy, you raised the issue of the prospect of putting this stuff on a link online to the recording, is that
I would love to talk to you guys about that during the return to in-person board meetings, or maybe when we get down there, since it's on topic, because action only minutes are just so much simpler and faster. They would be done tomorrow, quite frankly, and then we could just get the link out there. It's almost immediately available, including a transcript, although, the transcript doesn't necessarily transcribe every single one of our words, but the video and the audio are available, and we could get a way to put it out on the website. We have a way to do that.
okay? If you want to, maybe we can discuss that. Well, yeah, we could discuss this now, maybe putting it on a future agenda.
Yeah.
When you think that's appropriate.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Will do.
All right. Moving on, I think. Item 6, no hearings or appeals. So item 7A.
Okay, Rena, you and Marty.
Yeah, thanks. So board, we're finally at the point where it's time to consider adopting the water shortage contingency plan and the urban water management plan. The state's asked all purveyors that they adopt them separately. And I think part of the reason for that is we know that the water shortage contingency plan is a document that's going to be amendable by us. If we need to make changes to it over the next 5 years, we'll be able to do that. And the urban water management plan is not as easily amendable. So I think that was maybe why he's doing that. But so that's why you're seeing these two agenda items separately. It's just a requirement of state that they be adopted separately. So kind of getting into it, Marty Laporte, our consultant, is also here tonight. I'm going to have her just kind of, after you hear my summary here, she's going to just talk about some of the changes that were discussed at the last board meeting in July. And we talked about this because there's a couple of things that the board had questioned. And so she's going to talk about that, and also just talk about our water shortage contingency plan and some of the action levels. So in summary, just kind of getting to it, the water shortage contingency plan and the urban water management plan, if you recall, back in June of 2020 is when we engaged Ms. Laporte and her team to help us prepare our 2020 version of the water shortage contingency plan and the urban water management plan. And her contract at that time was for a little under $54,000. We gave her 10% contingency just in case we needed it. Well, as you find out in the staff report reading, we blew through that, but the board is well aware. We've kept you informed of what's happened over the last many months, and of course the biggest thing being in the beginning of this calendar year in January, as all of the wholesale water customers were waiting to hear from the San Francisco Public Utility Commission water folks as to this common language regarding water supply that we needed to have for our urban water management plan. When it hit us, it threw us into shock. I'm using that term, and it caused a lot of heartburn for all the water agencies, and it caused us to have to spend more time, which meant more money with Miss Laporte. And also, you may recall, board, that we engaged an outside water attorney to kind of help us wade through what we thought were some very distinct challenges. And so as we've gone through the process, we've done our best to keep the board apprised of what's taking place with both the documents. You know, we all knew that at the beginning, the goal was to try and have the urban water management plan and water shortage contingency plans and the appendices that are part of the documents ready for board adoption and submittal to the state by July 1st, 2021. But with that information from the San Francisco PUC, we made a recommendation to you folks that it was probably best to study it a little bit more, to have an attorney come out and take a look and help us and make sure that we didn't lose our position when it came to our water, our supply guarantee. And I might have Marty, when we get to that point, she might be able to recall the language that we are using throughout the document to kind of help make sure that we don't lose our position with regards to our water supply and our supply guarantee from San Francisco. So as you know, after wading through all that, doing some study and talking with the board, by June, we were ready with the administrative draft, and we issued that administrative draft on June 10th and opened up a 6-week-long public comment period. We also did some outreach to our water customers, knowing that what we heard from San Francisco PUC and our water supply, if there comes a drought, well, what do you know, we're in a drought. There could be some major water supply issues for all of the wholesale customers in the peninsula and throughout California. But we just wanted to make sure our customers were aware of that, so you know that we provided our customers with a mail card to let them know what was going on in case they wanted to take a look at the urban water management plan, and also if they wanted to engage when we had the 2 public hearings, one on June 24th and the second one on July 22nd. We did hold those public hearings. We made everybody aware, as is required by the regulations for urban water management plans and water shortage contingency plans. And during those 2 public hearings, we opened them and didn't have any public comments. The board had a couple of comments, and again, Marty's here to kind of address those and make you aware of what we did. And we decided too that after the close of the public hearing, that ended the public comment period. And because of the length and the breadth of the documents, we just thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to allow everything to kind of settle in and maybe percolate through the month of August, which was a quiet month for the board. But that we committed to being back here tonight with a recommendation to approve the water shortage contingency plan through one resolution, and then the urban water management plan with another resolution. So that's why we're here tonight. We feel we are in a position now to ask the board to adopt a resolution 2123 for the water shortage contingency plan. The resolutions have been prepared with the assistance of legal counsel with Julie's office, and we're here now to do that. Now I'm going to let Marty maybe add a couple of highlights or a few highlights related to the water shortage contingency plan, and then when she's done, we'll take any comments and try and answer them for the board members. Marty?
Hello, board members. Good evening. Thank you for having me and engaging in this process. So I just wanted to remind us that the 2 public hearings were above and beyond what's required. We were only required to have 1 public hearing, but you wisely chose to provide more time for people to comment if they so chose. There were 2 consecutive weekly advertisements that were broadly out there for each public hearing. So there was a lot of notice to the community about these plans. When we met last time on July 22nd, at the second public hearing, there were some comments, and I'd like to address those because we've worked with staff to incorporate some changes in the water shortage contingency plan. I also wanted to let you know that as far as the process for what happens next, I'll cover in a few minutes as well. Specific to the water shortage contingency plan, Renee mentioned that there is language, legal language throughout the document. And the language has to do with San Francisco's perpetual commitment about the supply assurance to you and the other customers that they have this contract with. It's an obligation to deliver 184 million gallons per day to the 26 agencies and customers, the wholesale customers as we are called. And as Renee mentioned, the Bay Delta plan was what the wrinkle was that actually was surprised, I think, everybody, including Bosca. And so what that meant was, if you recall, San Francisco provided two scenarios. One was with the Bay Delta plan in place starting in 2023. So that's when the reductions would take place, assuming their modeling of an 8.5-year pretty harsh drought. So the specific information you requested last time on July 22nd was information about the Association of Bay Area Governments, and that there be some mention about the fact that that's where we, since there's so much reliance on population numbers for per capita and for growth, that we put that in. So we have that in several places. When initially mentioned as a reference in the footnote on that page. And it's basically saying that the Association of Bay Area Governments provides these scenarios based on their research and work with the cities and counties. So they're not creating the numbers themselves, they're actually getting them from the individual cities. And that other agencies, for various other reasons, in addition to the urban water management plans, rely on these numbers for growth information, especially for areas like yours where you don't have clear city boundaries, where you couldn't use census or finance data. So this is what both Bosca uses for their forecast documents, as well as what you have used for, I think that I know the last 2015 urban water management plan, and probably the one before that too, the 2010. So we address that, and also in references, there's more of a lengthy, there's about a paragraph discussing the report that we reference, and it's the future. The report is a forecast through 2040 for population and growth and jobs and alike. The other question you had, or discussion point you had, was about emergencies. And I'm sure you remember that one. It had to do with who makes the decision in an emergency about the fact that this is an emergency. So in working with your staff and general manager, we came up with a way to describe that the operational aspect of this may have to be handled in the field by the general manager or their designee. That is, if an emergency is so potentially hazardous that the consequences would be dire if quick decisions weren't made. So in the field, decisions could happen with the general manager or their designee. However, for the emergency, the legal standing of the emergency, and or actually to enact some of the shortage levels, if you had to go to 5 or 6 or any level really that requires a declaration of an emergency, that would be the board's decision. So that would be your formal declaration that yes, indeed, you have an emergency. And of course, the general manager or their designee would be in touch with you as soon as they could once they handled the in the field crisis. So I think that's all I was going to say about that. I was going to give you a little bit of information about what next happens on the plan should you adopt it tonight. And that is that it has to be submitted electronically to the Department of Water Resources through a web portal. So it's not just the plan, but probably 36 tables as well individually have to be uploaded rather. And my understanding is that as with the last plan, the data from the tables needs to be re-entered on the website. So we haven't done this yet, but that was my understanding. But basically all the tables that are in the plan and some additional tables have to be uploaded separately from the plan. And then once we have that in, which we expect to have by October 1, then we get a verification from the state that we'll submit to your staff, and they will have for your records that both the plans were submitted and received by the Department of Water Resources. And then in addition to that, we also have to submit on either a CD or hard copy all the documents to the state libraries. So we definitely plan to put it on a CD. Unfortunately, they will not take flash drives yet. So, but we can put it on a CD and submit it to the libraries. Your staff will be contacting the cities of Belmont, San Carlos, and San Mateo County, your main cities and county customers, to let them know that your plan is final. And it can be an electronic notification, as well as for them just to access it on your website, which is where the plans are currently, or the documents are currently. So they don't have to submit hard copies to the cities. As you may recall, throughout both documents, the Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan, we have put in language highlighted it in kind of an orange color to let people know that before they use the data for especially shortages and droughts, they should contact your staff, because no doubt there will be updates to this from San Francisco, and the shortage allocations will have to follow from BOSCA. So before people start planning in the city of Belmont or San Carlos, if they're planning big projects, they really need to contact you for updated information. I think that is all I had. If you would like me to cover anything else, please let me know.
Are there any questions, comments?
Sorry, Brian, this
Yes,
is Kathy. I had a question. I just had a question. And forgive me for being new. I just had a question on the budget. So it sounds like just with the history that we had allocated 75,000, but because of a couple of extra things that happened, we went over budget by a little under $2,000. So I'm just a little curious about that, since we started this process in June of 2020 and we were already in the pandemic. So I recognize that we had to hire a separate water attorney and we needed to have additional information. I just wanted to ask if this is kind of normal, within range, just because I have nothing to base my history on.
That's a fair question, Board Member Mostacisa. We were on track and on budget up until January 2021, when the SFPUC released their water supply and water reliability, and it threw us for a curveball. And at that point, then the general manager and I decided, we need to make the board members aware of what's going on. And we also, I believe we made them aware that we would probably be spending more money on our consultant, Mrs. Laporte's company or firm, to help us wade through, how we wanted to respond to that. So to answer the question, primarily, we typically don't try to spend more than what we budgeted. But in this particular case, because of something that was not foreseen, the information we received from San Francisco PUC, we felt we just wanted to keep the project moving. And we worked again with informing the board that we were going to be using some additional funds at the general manager and authority to keep the project moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, and I think Brenna, you just addressed it. I don't recall the specific conversation about the general manager funds. I think, you know, I don't think that GM's $25,000 authority is intended to then supplant or be used on top of the 10% contingency that the board grants on a contract. I think that that's the authority we give for entering into a contract as a whole. But if, you know, I'm not questioning the cost at all. Don't get me wrong. It's I saw the curveballs that came through from San Francisco and understand the nature of what was being dealt. And, you know, we've got a great document for, let's just say that EKI would have charged a lot more when I was there for the document that Marty wrote. So anyway, I'm sure that was stated and that we were given due notice, and, you know, but I just want to be clear that, at least in my opinion, the GM authority is not you know, typical procedure to be added on to a contract.
Right. That's correct. It's not.
That was all.
Louis, did you want to say
Oh,
anything?
yes. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. A couple of things. Yes, we indeed are in a drought. We're not in an emergency yet because I think we're still under the voluntary reduction. So, but if the trend continues, we may get into an emergency by, you know, by January if things don't change. A couple of things that I wanted to comment on. One is just an observations, and in the first paragraph, Marty, it says that it requires an urban water supplier providing water for more than 3,000 customers. And then the first whereas does not talk about customers, it talks about population. So anybody who's reading this would still will not know how many customers we have. So the first thing that came to mind was, we know that, you know, two wrongs don't make a right, but two rights don't necessarily make a right either, because I think both statements are correct here. We do have the requirement for 3,000 customers, and it is correct that Belmont has a population of around 27,000. So, but I understand that the customers would be what, about 9,000, Tammy?
Can I just chime in there?
Yeah.
There is actually a table that requires how many connections you have.
Okay.
And it is so it's mentioned in the system description as well as in chapter 3. So you could check out that table. I think it's over 8,000. Renee, correct me, please.
I want to say it's a little over 8,100 connections.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
So 8116 is what I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And Marty, question for you then. When this is submitted to the state, does it get just shelved there to collect dust like everybody else is, or is it reviewed by somebody? It's going to come back to us. You know, so our approval is going to be checked by somebody else, or our approval will be accepted?
No, it is checked by the state. And so there is a checklist in Appendix 1. So the appendices volume is its own document. So the first appendix is a checklist of all the requirements that the state has throughout both the urban water management plan and the urban and the water shortage contingency plan. And in that checklist, which is, I don't know, about 16 pages or so, I think, that's the first place the state looks to validate that you have addressed everything. And so there's a column on the far right that we had to fill out to show where in the plans that requirement is satisfied. And so basically they'll look at that and go to the document and see if that section addresses what they want us to address specifically, and I believe it does.
Very good. Okay, so yeah, we checked our own checklist, and okay, very good. All right, thank you.
So to address Lewis's concern with what we've got on the screen here, maybe if that second whereas had added to the end of it, water supplier providing a water to a population of over 27,000 and more than 3,000 customers. Lewis, would that sound good to you?
I mean,
I
know the answer, so it doesn't make a difference to me now. But yeah, if we could do that, in other words, we do have the population, and yes, we do meet the requirement for an urban water management plan. So, I mean the shortest contingency plan. So I think it will explain it better, for somebody who's reading it from the outside.
So if what I said sounded good to you, Lewis?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Any concerns from staff?
We could also add, if the board prefers, to have the actual number of connections, the 8,100 connections, 8,116. Is there a preference the board has?
Yeah, to me, if you put that we do have more over the 300 customers, then that meets the intent of the requirement.
Yeah,
okay.
Is that good?
As long as it's fine with everyone, let's just say more than 3,000 customers. Add that to the end of that whereas.
That whereas, okay.
I'm assuming time to speak up if anyone has concerns or any other questions. And if not, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Do we approve them separately or together?
There are two separate resolutions. Yeah, so I'm going to talk next about the urban water management plan. So we're focused on the contingency plan here.
Okay, so I'll move to accept resolution number 2021-24.
23.
23.
23. Wait a minute.
Second?
This one. Yeah.
Who seconded? Okay.
That is seconding, I believe.
Okay.
Okay, let's do the roll call. Kathy, did you have a comment before we vote?
No. I was just turning on for the roll call. Sorry.
Got it. Thank you. All right, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Director Vella?
Yes.
Director Zucca?
Yes.
Vice President Wheeler?
Kirk, you're muted if you're hearing this.
I cannot change it.
We can hear you now, Kirk.
We can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay. Director Mosita?
Yes.
President Schmidt?
Yes, did we get a vote from Kirk as well?
We did.
Okay, great. Thanks. Let's move on to item 7B.
Yeah, so thanks. So item 7B is the companion. It's the actual urban water management plan, and the water shortage contingency plan is a subset, so to speak, of the urban water management plan. But the staff report is very similar, other than on the second page of the staff report, you see under discussion, not discussion, right before discussion, the very bottom of the background, it talks about some of the additional requirements. There's 5 additional requirements that were put on the water purveyors as they were preparing their 2020 urban water management plan. The water reliability planning for a 5-year drought, a drought risk assessment for a 5-year period between 2021 and 2025, taking a look at your water supply infrastructure from a seismic risk standpoint, and making use of the local hazard mitigation plan that actually the district is a part of as a part of the San Mateo County local hazard mitigation plan effort right now. And then also that there is a standalone water shortage contingency plan document, which the board just approved. And then that each chapter of your urban water management plan has a lay description, a synopsis, a summary that somebody could read at the beginning of the chapter, so they don't have to read the entire technical document if they didn't want to. So that is kind of a summary. The whole process was very similar. The budget, of course, was the same to prepare both documents. We held the public hearings and so on. And I want to just ask Marty if there's anything that you might want to bring up with regard to the urban water management plan to bring the board up to speed before maybe they have questions of us.
Not on the urban water management plan. The only remaining discussion point would be on the water shortage contingency plan. We talked about the different levels of shortages, and as you may recall, there are 6 levels. So more than 50% is the last level, and we did discuss at previous public hearings and board meetings the difficulties with achieving more than 50% reductions. The way the water shortage contingency plan is structured this time is that the Department of Water Resources required some percentage range or percentage specificity about how much reduction each level can bring. So for example, level 1, 10%, and each level 10% or more. So we worked with Medal's Water Management on this, and they actually provided a wonderful template for this table that listed a whole menu of different items that could possibly be done to reduce water use. So this was all water demand reduction. They're not necessarily additive in the sense that if you do one and then if you do another one, you won't have a higher or the total amount of reduction that we listed as a range. So we ranged most things from either 1% or 0% to 5%. There were some items, especially when we get into the higher levels like 5 and 6, where you're only providing water for health and safety, where we included a reduction of a much higher level in that, because that would mean that you would be cutting out all irrigation and all other water uses. So I believe some of those we upped to about 30%. If you hadn't already reduced that much on those actions, like if you were still irrigating, for example, or letting people irrigate. But in reality, I think the water shortage contingency plan would probably work as you've done in other droughts, where you start reducing the amount of latitude people have to use water, especially outdoors, since about 60% of your water use is outdoors. So you start doing things like you can only water 3 days a week. Now you can only water 2 days a week. And then you reduce it down. And then eventually, if you really had a dire situation, you would have to say no more watering, except for maybe some very few exceptions. Anything else, Renee, you want me to mention?
Yeah, maybe add to that. So when we were discussing this, board members, we actually had some debate. They were saying, when you get to the point where you're going to be asking people no watering outside, you know, are we going to have a Mid-Peninsula District water police going around in the middle of the night, you know, looking for people who are watering when they're not supposed to? And we're saying we're probably going to have to, you know, we would probably hire some sort of security service or something that would be cost effective if it costs more to have staff do it, to keep an eye on people, because you know that could happen. You know, the worst, not worst, 5 years ago when we went through this process with the drought in 2015, most of you all know, because you were part of the district here, that we actually achieved, I believe it was like a 28% reduction. You know, so we know that we could probably get 20%, but trying to get to 40-50%, that's going to be a real push. And then, you know, again, how are you going to go out there and enforce that? And so we were talking about that, and we also took a look at what are other agencies around us doing in their water shortage contingency plans and their level of efforts to try and achieve that 50 or 60% reduction. And a lot of them are doing things similar, and some of them are doing things a little bit different. So there wasn't anything that everybody was doing the same. So we thought about it, and we feel our approach is appropriate for us, and that's our story, and we're going to stick to it. So at this point, We'll open up to any questions that the board members may have with regards to the adoption of the urban water management plan for 2020.
Yeah, the discussion branched back to the water shortage contingency plan, but that's fine. Do board members have any questions either about that or about the urban water management plan or comments? Okay, yeah, we've had lots of discussions over the last few meetings. Do we have someone with a motion to approve the resolution?
A question here, Board President. Would you like us to also include in this resolution 2124, the same second whereas, add to, after the 27,000 population, add the more than 3,000 customers?
Yeah, that makes sense, I think, to be consistent.
Okay, we'll do that.
Louis, did you have a question?
Yeah, the only comment that I wanted to mention is to Retta's comments on the water police, and hopefully this will not get to that, but obviously we would have to have some kind of a charges in place as well, right, for those who abuse the system or abuse the privilege, which will get very, very complicated, obviously. So I don't know if you guys discussed that right now.
We didn't discuss fines or penalties. I know that in our rate structure, of course, right, we have the drought contingency rate structure. And that's something, again, that, we're going to reinvigorate our rate study and our capacity fee studies now that we've hopefully adopt these two documents so that we can incorporate that. And so one of the things that we need to talk about is what does a new or a revised drought rate look for us going further. And we could consider, if there should be some sort of monetary penalty along with people who abuse it. But I don't believe that we have a penalty, Tammy, you can correct me, if we have a penalty for people who are wasting water per se, other than, we can get their attention. And we can't shut people's water off if they have a leak. And we were just talking about that today, and they don't repair that leak. We can't shut them off. But I'm not aware that we have a penalty for wasting water or, using water because we just haven't gotten to that point yet.
I'm reaching back to 2015 when we had this discussion, and it might have been Matt that brought it up, and we just said that when we get nearer that time, we would have to talk about what kinds of fines or fees, okay? Because it's just difficult right now to figure out what those might be if we don't know the totality of the situation, you know what I mean? And then we don't know what everybody else is doing. So I think that would probably be the same thing that I would recommend that we do this time too. We stay on top of it, and we would just come back to the board and go, here's what we see as the potential if we enter into these levels 5 and 6.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because shutting water off from people gets into the health situation thing. That could get a little complicated too. And but if there's no repercussion, if there's no some kind of a punishment or something, the behavior will keep on repeating itself, and it's just like it will be a waste of time to do that. So maybe there will be some kind of warnings, and then the penalty of something like that. But hopefully we will not get to that. But it's good to stay ahead of the curve if the situation or the conditions are pointing towards something like that ahead of time.
Thanks, Louis. Any other questions or comments? Okay, does someone like to make a motion to approve?
I move to adopt resolution number 2021-24, adopting the Mid-Peninsula Water District 2020 Urban Water Management Plan.
I'll second.
Second. I think Matt second. We'll do a roll call, please.
Director Vella,
Yes.
Director Zuka,
Yes.
Vice President Wheeler,
Yes.
Director Mostacisa,
Yes.
and President Schmidt.
Yes. Congratulations. And thank you, Marty, and for staff for all your work.
Yeah, thanks,
Good
Mark.
for
All the
other-
help.
Thank you
What's
very
that?
much.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging with us, Marty, throughout this whole process.
Well, we still have a little bit to go,
Yeah,
but
we do.
it's almost there.
I'm glad it's
Okay,
you
good.
doing it and not me.
Okay,
Yes.
good night, everybody. I'll sign
Yes.
off now.
Good
Thank
night,
you,
Marty.
Marty.
Hi, Marty.
Good night. And meanwhile, let's hope for rain.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, moving on, item 7C.
It's my show tonight,
Yeah.
the regular agenda items, yeah. So board members were asking you to consider resolution 2125, authorizing a task order. A task order is a new process for moving work forward with the district engineer on projects. This one particular task order is related to the Coven tank replacement capital improvement project. You may recall that back in December 2018, the board approved a contract amendment with PAC4 Consulting Engineers for $196,000 to start the design process to replace the two Coven tanks, the oldest tanks in our water distribution system. I think they're circa 1952 up in the neighborhood in the Coven area. And then in October of last year in 2020, they came back and there was an amendment to their contract for $85,000 and change, and that was for work that was related to, after listening to and having some engagement with the neighbors up there and taking a look at the landscaping, and I'm sure a lot of board members are familiar with it. The landscaping and the fencing around that particular site is in dire need of some improvement. So we worked with PAC4 engineer, and they engaged a landscape architect to help prepare, and that was a part of the largest part of that particular amendment to the contract, $85,000, was working with a firm called Calander Associates to help us go through landscaping and fencing improvements, and then also preparing, I believe at this time, an arborist report. We found out that there's 13 large trees around the property, and of those 13, I want to say 7 of them are pines, and of those 7 pines, I think there's like 4 or 5 that are dead or dying. And so we wanted to have an assessment of those trees to find out what we needed to do and incorporate that into any future plans. This particular task order just kind of trues up the level of effort that Jubin's firm has provided over the last several months. A lot of engagement with our neighbors up there. I know Jubin and I have met with several of the neighbors up there and talked with them about their concerns during construction process, contractors bringing materials there and traffic and so on, and then trying to help ameliorate some of the concerns with regard to tank color and so on. And so, as you know, and some of you know, because you have been and are consulting engineers are in the profession, that there's time and money associated with that. So what we are asking for here is basically a true up for the level of effort that Jubin's office has provided related to this particular capital project. And of course, this is the capital project that we brought to the board, the bids, the open public bids for the Coven tanks at the, I think it was a June meeting, June or July meeting. I tell you, the months go by so fast. And the results, we had 2 bidders. The engineer's estimate was a little over $4 million, and the lowest responsible bidder was 5.1 or $5.2 million. So we asked the board to reject the bids, and you did. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. We have asked PAC4 Consulting Group to take a look and do a water storage analysis to find out whether or not we need to rescale these particular tanks based on our water demands and emergency demand needs and so on in the water system, but maybe more specifically to the Coven tank. But in the meantime, you know, we're asking the board to approve this resolution and fund and pay for the level of effort that Jubin and his folks have provided to the district. Are there any questions the board members have with regard to this particular staff request?
Matt.
Yeah, Rana, you're calling this a true up. Is this a contract adjustment for work that's being planned or the work that's been performed?
It's been performed.
Okay, I mean, I think that's not in line with what my expectations are as a board member for when contracts come to the board for approval. Not after the work's been authorized and executed. It would be prospectively approved because you're planning it appropriately and that you know that we're going to be going over budget, even if it's, I mean, if we meet monthly, if we have, granted it's been a couple of months, but I personally am fine not questioning the cost. I just am questioning the sequence of this information coming to the board.
Director Zuka, if you recall, over the last 12 months, both in our written reports and in our oral presentations, over the course of, I think, about 3 or 4 reports, we've been informing the board of this cost and the meetings that we're having with the district, with the customers, and the thought process that only on this one particular case, we were letting the board know, both Rena, myself, and Tammy, that this cost was being tracked and it was going to be addressed with a single task order at the end. But I agree with you 100%, Director Zuka. This is not the norm as far as how we address these kind of costs. But in this one particular case, because of the unknowns with relation to the customers, the district general manager and operations manager decided that the best way to move forward rather than do incremental task orders was to true it up at the end. So we were letting the board know that that was coming through written reports and oral reports, that in this particular case we were going to do that. But I agree with you 100% that this is not the way to proceed. But in this case, it was decided by staff that it was the best way.
Yeah, no, and I'm not disputing that that we haven't heard a lot about this project and colors and selection, and that there hasn't been heavy public engagement. I'm certainly supportive of all of that. I guess 1 out of 5 board members here, you know, the one that's just speaking at the moment, not certainly the policy, but I think what I would rather see personally is 2 months ago when we met last is a contract that comes before us saying we don't know what it's going to be, but I think I need $25,000 more in order to cover my cost because we're planning ahead and we're hitting that milestone. Rather than getting true ups of, you know, this size, which it's not huge, but it's more than 10% of the contract, so it's fairly substantial on a percentage basis. Is you know, no problem. We're asking for a lot of public engagement and there's a lot of out of scope work, and I think you guys have done a great job of keeping us informed of the work that you're doing. It's a 1-page contract amendment for $25,000 for general consulting services associated with this item. It comes before the board on agenda item and we see it in advance, and we're not having the conversation. That to me is the way the process is supposed to work, and I don't think that.
You're turned muted, Matt.
Oh, you just muted Matt.
Oh, I accidentally tapped my magic mouse, and
Yeah.
it functions as a click. And it was over, my cursor is over the mute button. Anyway, I would just personally prefer that staff come to us with a budget augmentation, even if it's somewhat speculative, to say we need to authorize $25,000 on a contract because we're getting to the end and we need to cover it in advance. And that way, at least the board is in a position to say, whoa, 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 let's back off on what we're doing here because we're not sure that the public outreach is worth it or whatever. This to me kind of takes the board's authority away from the process I think that we're supposed to be filling. So I guess my request would be, you know, personal request is that we actually follow the contract procedures rigorously because they're there for that reason. And if it's an emergency expenditure, or there's a lot of different ways that we can do this to get the approval up front, I think. Tammy has a $25,000 budget authority where it could be like, it's kind of, you know, if it's the same contract, that might not be the right contracting mechanism for it. But the fundamental point I think I'm trying to make is I would personally like to see this in advance. So.
Kathy?
Yes, so I agree with Director Zuka. I also had that same question that when I read through the packet that we were authorizing something, the work that has already been done. And so I'm not questioning the work, but I do agree with Director Zuka in terms of process. I know my first meeting was just in July, but I thought it would have been a good time to bring that to our attention, that there are some overages that are coming. And so as he indicated, then we're authorizing the work to be done rather than we're just authorizing work that has been done and we have to pay for it. So it takes the authority away from us to have a discussion as to whether we want to use the budgetary dollars or not for something in the future. So I agree with Director Zuka on that point.
Tammy, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, I was going to say that's very constructive and very fair. And, one of the things you just heard from Zubin, we've always, and thank you, Matt, for acknowledging that we have talked ad infinitum about all the different outreach. And we are very appreciative for the assistance that Petport Consulting gave us during all that work, especially, and I don't mean to demean what Zubin's contributions were, but Victor Fong being out there and being the face of the district with those customers was just amazing. So I was just thinking to myself out loud that, we know now and be prepared that next month on the consent agenda, you'll see a task order, because we are going to continue to work with PCG, as you just heard Rena say about that. So right now it's going to be a WAG basically, but we will be bringing back another task order. I just don't want anybody to be surprised, because we want to continue the momentum of the project, but we need the district engineer's assistance. So we'll bring back a task order, loud and clear message received, and we appreciate that feedback.
Thanks, Tammy. Louis?
Yeah, I would have to assume that there is a detailed description of exactly what was done and when it was done, right, Tammy?
Yes. In fact, Brenda, did you attach it?
Yeah, his scope, Jubin's scope of work, it should have been attached.
It's right here.
Right there. There you go.
Yeah, but you would have like a daily, how were those hours accumulated?
Oh yes, they have detailed records.
We monthly.
The details that led to this, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, somebody has those, I'm assuming, right? I mean, nobody came up to us and says, oh, by the way, I did 170 hours extra.
No.
It wasn't like that, right?
Petport has that well documented.
That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Yes.
We're not talking rocket science here, but my point also is that, as you can see, all of us read the same report, and all of us are a little bit, let's say, uncomfortable, would be the word, without going into a lot of stuff. Nobody likes to see something that in front of them that they didn't know about before. That's all we're talking about. We're not talking about the integrity of the people that cut to this, but this is something that will kind of make people kind of rearrange themselves on their seat, kind of. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Louis. There are no other comments. I had one comment of my own when I'm looking at these 5 bullet points we see in front of us. I think the top 4 are basically accommodating neighbors. And I believe we have a fair amount of prior expenses on this that are accommodating neighbors. And we should spend some time and effort accommodating neighbors. But eventually we need to cut it off, basically, and make decisions. I'm wondering if we're doing too much of that in the case of this particular project. So having said that, I'll still, of course, support the item.
For me, I was just going to comment that it was just several meetings, that's all. And it wasn't necessarily with the same neighbors. And then, correct me, Rena, we had at least 2 public meetings, I think maybe 3.
Virtual meetings. We had 2 virtual meetings with the neighbors there that not super well attended, but we had, half a dozen or more people who attended them and asked questions and were very interested in, what was going to happen up there and how was it going to affect their property value and views of from their property. Yeah.
Yeah. Louis, you had something else?
Yeah, just a quick one, just to piggyback on what you just said, Brian, is that when we were doing the export tank, I remember doing exactly the same thing. A couple of directors actually met with the neighbors, more than once, and we just listened to their concerns, and we brought the concerns to the district. One meeting, it was just Director Alcher and I, and it was a very, very long meeting. And we met at one of the neighbors' houses, and the other one, the general manager was with us, and we brought everything to the district because it is important. And I do appreciate, Jubin's and Renee's efforts to educate and to kind of calm down the neighbors and to explain to them what's going on. That is almost as important as the work itself, because obviously you want the neighbors on your side as much as possible. Although, once they see the work, then you start getting a different feedback than you thought you had before the work starts. But yeah, we appreciate that work, and it's a very, very important work that needs to be done. Question for Juba, since I have the floor. These tanks normally, I thought they had like a 100-year life. That's not correct, is it? These are 70 years old, basically.
Louis, the integrity of the steel is not falling apart, but when they were constructed to seismic code of 70 years ago. So essentially, there was no seismic code 70 years ago. So we can theoretically repaint the tanks, and the integrity of the steel is fine as long as the ground doesn't move, right? So really, one of the main reasons that we're looking at rebuilding these tanks is for the seismic vulnerability of the tanks. So right now we're operating them not at full capacity. We're operating them at a safe capacity that the structural engineer has said that we can operate them. And because of low water usage and demands, we can accommodate it using our other tanks and within the district. And so it's not an inherent risk how we're operating it, but obviously if we have a tank that's 1 million gallons, just like a dam, we want to be able to use it to its full capacity if we can. So we looked at the very, very beginning, we looked at 3 alternatives way back 4 years ago. If you remember, we brought it to the board 4 years ago to just rebuild, retrofit the tank and paint it and just operate it at a minimal, safe level, or reconstruct the tank. And
correct, yeah, I remember that.
Was incrementally more than rehabbing it. So it made sense to, at that point, to demolish and rebuild the tank. But essentially, long way of saying that the tanks themselves are not necessarily falling apart. It's that fact that they're essentially resting on the ground with no foundation. So any kind of movement will result in a potentially catastrophic damage if the tanks were operating at full level.
Correct. Yeah, I understood. So the 1906 earthquake did not teach us much, but the 1989 earthquake taught us a lot.
Every earthquake, and the thing about earthquakes is, if being an engineer, the thing about earthquakes is it doesn't happen very often, right? So it's not like we're learning wildfires every year, right? So the Kobe earthquake, we learned a lot. The Northridge earthquake, we learned a lot. The Lone Period, we learned a lot. But the duration, it's like 10, 15 years, thankfully, between these. And the instrumentation and the data collection just gets better and better. So the seismic codes get better and better. And so we're using the latest and greatest seismic code that we know to design these tanks, or they have been designed. And so the next step, as the general manager mentioned, is for a overall storage analysis to see, with the lower with our usage decreasing since 2013, how much storage do we really need, and if we can maybe phase this project where we maybe build one tank at a time, build one pad, the other pad, build one tank, build the other pad, and maybe build a tank later. So we're not giving up the space. So we're going to look at it more holistically and see if there's opportunity there. And in the meantime, crossing our fingers that steel prices, if you remember in July, I showed you that graph of the steel prices just going straight up. And so hopefully that will maybe come straight down. So, I mean, I don't anticipate.
Well, that was going to be my next quick question, and I will shut up on this one. But do you think that, Renee or Juben, at this point, that if we were to go out to bid again, that we may get better pricing?
As
Is it heading that way, or we're not?
I would say
there yet?
Not right now.
right now, no. And Louis, the problem is that one is the material cost. The other is that unfortunately, there's only a handful of contractors that do this kind of work. So it's very specialized work. So the other thing that we're looking at also is looking at different types of tank material. So historically, 100% of our tanks have been welded steel, which is a pretty normal type of tank construction. But there are other means of other materials that are used, pre-stressed concrete, for example, bolted steel for tanks. They all have advantages and disadvantages.
Correct.
But if we increase the pool of contractors that bid our job, then more competition theoretically will lead to better pricing. So that's another one that we're looking at. There was a job that was recently bid out, and I believe that it just awarded in City of Palo Alto, and they did an alternative with steel and pre-stressed concrete for the same tank. So we're going to monitor that and see how that goes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Louis. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve? Kathy?
Yeah, I'm trying to get to it. I move that we approve. Sorry, I'm looking at it here. Is it 2021-25, authorizing the task order for Mid-Peninsula Water District 21-01 in the amount of $35,530 with District Engineer Papcor Consulting Group Incorporated. Should I read the whole? Do I need to read the whole thing?
I don't think so. Julie's
Okay.
saying
Okay.
thank you.
I'll
Kirk, are you second?
Second.
Kirk got it.
We'll alternate it a little bit. Okay, roll call, please.
Director Mostasisa,
Yes.
Vice President Wheeler,
Yes.
Director Vella,
Yes.
Director Zuka,
Yes.
President Schmidt.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Juben. Moving on, item 7D, and that is me. So that's about appointing Louis to fill the vacancy on the board finance committee. I wanted to put this on the agenda because normally when we were doing appointments, we all talk it through around the beginning of the year. I guess either December or January as we tend to talk it through. And in this case, when Dave resigned from the board, that left an opening on the finance committee that needed to be filled, and Louis was stepped up to the plate. I wasn't sure, but I was told I do have appointment authority, and we want to get those positions filled. So I was very happy to appoint Louis, and I just wanted to report out to everybody that that's what I did. I'm not sure if there's much more that needs to be discussed about it, but unless people want to talk about it. And then I assume we'll follow the normal process, end of this year, beginning of next year, of figuring out who's going to serve on which committees. So that's all I wanted to say. Any questions or comments? Kirk, your mic is on.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, no action to be taken on this. Thank you, Louis, for stepping up.
All right. You're welcome.
Moving on to item 7G. We're skipping that per our discussion earlier. Skipping to 7G first and then coming back. So the Bosca update, please.
Louis, you're muted.
Thank you. I did the same. I did the Zuka touch.
Didn't realize it had a name. Glad to have named something.
Yes, that means when your hand just drops on your mouse. Anyways, all right. So as I was saying, the BOSCA meeting was held on last Thursday, and the board adopted the consent calendar, which included the approval of the minutes, obviously as usual, and the receiving and filing of the budget status report for June 30th, 2021. Then after that, we had a report from the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission by Steve Ritchie, and who is the acting general manager for the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. And he provided a water supply conditions update for the regional water system. And as of September 13, 2021, the regional water system is at 68.5% of the total system storage capacity, which is below normal for this time of year. We are in a statewide drought with precipitation in the Tuolumne River watershed and in the Bay Area well below historical averages. As we all know, the governor has asked for a 15% voluntary water use reduction compared to the 2020 water use level. Where was I? Okay, and in addition, in July, the State Water Resource Control Board issued a notice of water unavailability applicable to the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission for its points of diversion in the Tuolumne Rivershed. Then in August, the State Board issued a curtailment order, which I think we're going to be talking a little bit about it later, of these points. And the State Board's notices provide for the request for exceptions to the curtailment, including an exemption for human health and safety. The San Francisco Public Utilities Commission will be closely monitoring the precipitation and water use in the coming months and preparing to take further action if necessary. Then we moved on to we discussed the revenue bonds, which was a very lengthy discussion, and it's a lot of financial technicalities, but the bottom line is that the net present value savings of not less than $20 million over the term of the bonds will be exercised. This was a very good move on the part of the Finance Commission of the board. Future committee and board meetings format for October. This is what I wanted to bring this up. It's that the existing modification to the Brown Act teleconference requirements will expire on October 1st. And with AB 361, that has passed the legislature and has been signed by the governor. AB 361 will effectively allow agencies to use the existing teleconference requirements. BOSCA will continue to meet remotely and take the necessary steps during meetings to comply with AB 361. Decision has been made that will continue to do this remotely. And the legal counsel will continue to monitor the situation and update the board, the BOSCA board, the chair and the CEO. Then as far as reports, the BOSCA June 2021 total potable water use is 3.2% less than June of 2020. So within a year, we reduced the water usage by 3.2% and 19% less than June of 2013, which is always the year that we compare to. The progress on the volunteer agreements has been slow as state has had to address developing drought situation, and BOSCA also continues to pursue having the state board perform an evaluation of the Tuolumne River and as the alternative to the Bay Delta plan. those were the, oh, and the last action that we did was we did the evaluation of the CEO in closed session. And the next board meeting will be on November 18th, 2021. And Tammy, I don't know if you wanted to add to this report.
I was just going to say the two things that stood out to me from the water management reps was the bond savings. Obviously, anytime there's a refunding, which in this case there are cost savings, and that always helps. And 23 million, I believe, was the number, just like Lewis reported. And second of all, just that stay tuned for that whole topic of curtailments on the San Joaquin tributaries. San Francisco sued. They're in court now because as a pre-1914 water rights holder, this is the first time, and everybody keeps using this word unprecedented, and they keep adding LYs and all those kinds of things to this word. This is the first time they've ever done that. And so Steve Ritchie did report that there's a very strong possibility, depending upon that litigation or the outcome of that litigation, that San Francisco will be coming to the wholesale customers in January, as early as January, with a potential mandatory 20% cutback. And that typically equates to a little bit more than that. So my ears perked up.
That's if we declare an emergency, though. That will be an emergency drought.
Yeah,
okay.
So it's just he's given us a heads up now, and I'm appreciative, and told Nicole the same thing, that at least we're finding out about it now rather than December 20th when everybody's going out of town. So we're going to meet on this, and this will be a priority project every month now, and we may have special meetings on it so that we can keep up with the progress and we can make sure that we know what's going to happen for next year. Thank you. That was it.
Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Tammy. That's it from me.
Thanks, Tammy. Lewis, any questions or comments? I did have one question for Tammy's comment about a 20% curtailment. Is that 20% curtailment based on recent usage or contract, or what exactly?
I'm sorry, it's not a 20% curtailment. It's just a curtailment, and what the way Steve Ritchie reported it, because it's the first time it ever happened, is it was a curtailment that SFPC could not store any more water, and they had to divert. So there's two components to it. But his report out to us as wholesale customers is that might result in a 20% mandatory cutback starting in January before the water year.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tammy. That's what I meant to ask. I misspoke.
No problem.
20% cutback based on what baseline? Our recent usage?
You asked the same question I did, and that has yet to be determined. That was the first question I asked as well.
Okay, interesting. All right. I'm sorry, somebody else had a question. I thought I saw a green light. No?
Well, actually, the 20% cutback is usually on tier 1, which is 20% on the 180 on there's a tier 1 agreement where San Francisco can declare water shortage emergency, and it goes back, it has to be, I think, 20%. And then tier 2 goes into effect, which is all of the BOSCO agencies use that 3-pronged formula of your supply guarantee, your 2005 or whatever it is, water consumption, and then the average of your last 3 years. That all gets factored into some ginormous spreadsheet that I used to get to play around with and have fun with to figure out what we get to cut back to as an individual agency. So this water supply agreement should dictate the baseline that we're cutting it back from. I would be, my understanding is that it's not. It's been a while since I've read it, though. I mean, my current job does not serve water, so I haven't looked at the WSA in a long time.
Yeah, that is yet to be determined, is all Steve Ritchie said. So,
well, I guess what I'm saying is it should be in the agreement. So I'm not sure what's to be determined. He may have just been hedging his bets, or evasive, I guess.
Well, actually, I asked that question also at BOSCO because, when they look at, precipitations ahead of time, I mean, they only forecast like 2 weeks ahead. If they go more than 2 weeks, he said, we'll be off. So the unknown probably is why Steve Ritchie was kind of hedging. So, but 20% is indeed, the number that the San Francisco will probably look at for all the wholesalers.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, no action on that one. So let's return to agenda order 7E.
So I did pretty much just a general report that with information that was available when I published it last week. So Julie and I have been talking since then, and she's our resident expert now on AB 361. Thank goodness, because it did some flip-flopping on me and I just got seriously confused. So I'm going to turn it over so that she can just kind of give like an update on where AB 361 is. Julie, if you don't mind.
Yes, I'm happy to. Okay, so Louis already introduced the topic. The executive order suspending the Brown Act teleconference rules expires on September 30th. And AB 361 had been out there for a while. It kept getting, amended in the legislative process. And there were a couple other bills that did not get adopted. And so we've been monitoring that situation for months. This one was an urgency statute, and Newsom requested that it be an urgency statute because that way it would be effective immediately, and it wouldn't, normally it's January 1st that bills are effective. And so because his executive orders were going to expire September 30th, he asked that this be urgency legislation and effective immediately. So it goes into effect on October 1st. Basically, the upshot is that we will be under the same situation as we currently are with the suspension of the teleconferencing rules under the Brown Act. That means if you wish, you may continue to meet virtually. There's a number of requirements that you have to meet, but you already are meeting all of those, having to do with public comment and the ability to submit comments and things like that. You are already doing all of that on your agendas. So your situation can just continue if that's what the board decides. But we will need to take action at the October meeting if you would like to continue doing virtual meetings. And every 30 days thereafter, you have to make continued findings. It can just go on consent, but the legislation does require specific findings. And you can only do this as long as there's a declared state, meaning California, state of emergency. As long as that state of emergency exists, you can continue doing this. And at this point, with the Delta variant, I'm not seeing that that's going to change anytime soon. That, knock on wood, it does, but it seems unlikely. People are doing great here in the Bay, but as you know, other parts of the state are not doing well at all. So that's it in a nutshell, and I can answer any questions if anybody has.
Any questions for Julie? So my understanding is I'm sorry, Louis, I'll let you go ahead.
Yeah, either or. So Julie, do we know, or does your company, since I know you represent different agencies, if anybody is considering going back to in-person in October and beyond?
So we represent a lot of agencies, and some of them are in more rural areas. In the Bay, there is no one going back to in-person meetings at this time. There may be one or two directors who are interested on a board, but not a majority at this point. In other rural areas, where there's less, let's say, concern, I guess, about the coronavirus. We're seeing more of those agencies being interested in going back, but not in the Bay Area.
Thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, not really a question for Julie, but just more a comment, since is that, I mean, I don't particularly see that our ability to function as a board is compromised in this format. In fact, I think from a transparency standpoint, it's actually been enhanced, because it's not just a voice recording. We have video recordings. We can talk about at some point in the future making that available for people to watch at their leisure. And if we go back to in person, having sort of that same conversation, I think, as well. I'm not particularly in a hurry to go back in. I don't think our ability to function as a board has been compromised, actually, in the slightest, except for the fact that we have to rely on a mute button to indicate our desire to speak. That's about the most annoying feature of this whole pandemic with this, I'd love seeing you guys in person too, but anyway, I think that would be my 2 cents worth. Is I know we just extended in San Mateo the going back into the office until November 1st. The council chambers is open. You can go and attend, but there's not a single council member there. So there's a viewing option there. I don't know why, but anyway, I think that's the most that I've seen. And so I could go either way. I think that we could find a way to do it safely. I'm going into the office every day, but I have, don't really see a need to enhance our ability to function as a board.
Louis, do you have a thought?
Yeah, just a quick thought here. Yeah, these mic buttons are a challenge sometimes. And the way you cannot raise your virtual hand is also a little bit of another challenge. But to me personally, and to the board, I mean, to me, it will be, I've already voted basically to do it virtual with Bauska. So for me to vote to do it virtually with Bauska and in person with this one, it's just like, what is this guy doing? So obviously I would have to lean that for the moment will stay like this. I do agree with Director Zuka that I don't think that we have diminished the purpose of the board and the functions that we fulfill. So for the time being, I don't think that we should be too presumptuous and forge ahead when we still have that little unknown still out there. So I would venture to lean towards keeping it the way it is for the time being. The question that I had for Julie earlier is at some point, if the state says that, hey, you can go on to regular in person, can an agency say, no, we like it this way, we're going to stay virtual? Or at that point, the Brown Act will come into place again?
So as long as there's a declared state of emergency, meaning the governor has declared a statewide emergency, then this bill, unless something changes, this bill will allow you to meet virtually. But if that emergency is lifted, then you may not. You could still have teleconferencing, but you'll have to comply with the Brown Act teleconferencing rules where, you have to let people come into your house. Not that anyone.
Correct. No. It makes perfect sense. Okay, so the emergency declaration will have to be lifted, and then everything will have to go back to. Okay, makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Louis. Kirk.
Yeah, I agree that the The virtual meetings seem to be working fairly well. It's a little awkward. It's not as much fun. We can't interrupt each other as much. But as long as,
Actually, I can do that pretty well. If you want to test me out.
Yeah. but we try not to, let's put it that way. But as long as the county's recommending that we would be masking and distancing at the meeting, it's going to create a lot of issues in the boardroom, and it doesn't really give us a big advantage going forward. So as long as that's going on, we probably should stay in virtual. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirk. Kathy, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to agree with everyone that, we're all used to being, I'm at home still 100% with my job. So I think in terms of just public safety, and as long as we're following all the rules that we need to follow, and we can still conduct business this way, that I think we just, my preference would also be to just stay virtual, even though I'd love to meet with you guys all in person one day. But yeah, for right now, because of the pandemic, I think it's prudent for us to stay this way.
Great, thanks. I agree with everyone else. So my question for Tammy and Julie is, do we need to take any action now for the October meeting, or are we good to stay virtual?
We'll be bringing back that resolution, like Julie said, next month, and then it will be on subsequent agendas thereafter on the consent to continue it. I was just going to add that when we did, Kathy came in for her orientation, 2 hours, the three of us, Kathy and Candy and I sat in the boardroom 6 feet apart with face masks on, and it drove me crazy. I mean, sitting there just for the 2 hours communicating that big data dump that was sitting in front of her, it was just very challenging. So I can't even imagine sitting here during a board meeting with a face mask on for 3 hours, 3.5 hours. So right now that's part of our COVID-19 prevention plan for the workforce. And it would be a challenge, I think, if I went to them and said, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to drop that mandate, because the board wants to meet in person. So I would actually have to take that to the bargaining unit, quite frankly.
Great, okay. Sounds like we're all set then. Thanks, everyone. So we don't need to take action, and let's move on to item 7F.
Yeah, thanks. So let's talk a little bit more about drought. Lewis gave us a great summary from what's happening at Bosca. Tammy, can you go to the next slide? I want to come back to this one, but go to the next one. The water. There you go. The water use chart. So here's our water use chart. The orange line in the middle is 2021's water use chart part of the graph. So you kind of see where we're at. The blue line up on top is what we call our benchmark year, which was 2013. And what Tam and I talked about this time is, we've been hearing, or we know that there's still just a 15% voluntary reduction that the governor's asked for, and even the SFPUC. So what I did on this is you'll see that there's a blue dash line, and the blue dash line is a 15% reduction from 2015's blue line up on top, okay? And I did the same thing for 2020 because it's now they're talking about 2020 being our base year. So you see the red line is the 2020 graph, and then I did a 15% dashed red line below it, so you can see what that would look like. And you can kind of compare where we're at in 2021, the orange line. It's kind of like right in the middle. And so what you're hearing then, or you can kind of refer from that, is we're probably about halfway to a 15% reduction from 2020 based on our current water consumption use patterns. And thinking about it too, we've only gotten the word out to our customers here in our community since July. We've been talking internally about what we can do and what we need to do to try and reach out to our customers even more to get some more attention. So you're probably going to see us doing some more to try and get customers' attention to see if we can get to a 15% reduction, just in case we have to go there. Now, Tammy, can you go back up to the drought map, the California drought map? Thank you. So this is the current California drought map as of September 7th, 2021. And the blood red in the middle is the exceptional drought, is what the category is really, really bad drought. And as of the current stage, almost half of California, 46% of California is in an exceptional drought. You can kind of see it really focused in the valley, the San Joaquin Valley and the Sacramento valleys. You see a lot of that, but it's also North Bay and even stretches into the Sierra Nevadas. What's interesting is if you go down to that table to the right, you go down to the bottom row 1 year ago, yeah, you'll see that totally different situation. We didn't have any part of California that was an exceptional drought, and just 3% of the state's area was in an extreme drought. So just let you know how things have changed over the past 12 months. But I mean, I've been kind of listening. Anytime I can hear somebody talk about it, I've listened to people talk, and I've heard a couple of people say that, we're actually in the middle, not in the middle, we're in the midst of a 20-year mega drought that started in the year 2000, believe it or not. Now let's go to the slide that shows the USA. Here you go. So this is the same Drought Monitor map, but exploded to show the entire United States. And so as you can see, west of the Mississippi, there's a lot of drought going on in the United States. And you can see how the exceptional drought not only goes into California, but goes in through almost the middle of, or the stomach of, Nevada and into Utah, and actually goes up into Oregon and Washington. And I was looking a little bit further into just the Oregon and Washington areas, and there's a lot of farming and ranching that go in that exceptional drought area. So, so far, I don't know if we've noticed too much impacts in terms of our food production and so on. But who knows, there might if this continues on, because they're being hit hard with the drought just like we are, and I imagine they rely on surface water and groundwater for their agricultural just like we do. The next slide, Tammy. And then this is just a picture of some of the major reservoirs in California. On the right-hand side, you'll see the Don Pedro Reservoir. That's the reservoir that is the regional water system's water bank. And that's why that one actually doesn't look as bad as some of the other reservoirs in California, because there's probably over 500,000 acre-feet of water in there that belongs to the regional water system. Whereas in contrast, if you go just straight across to the San Luis Reservoir, you can see how low that reservoir is. It can hold as much as 2 million acre-feet of water, and that red line is typically where it would be at right now during the water year. But currently it's at 13% level, and it's at 29% of that red line. So it's really a low there in the San Luis Reservoir. I haven't driven by it yet, but I've heard that they're having some algae bloom issues in that particular reservoir. And I know there are a number of cities that use that reservoir as their source of supply for water treatment and then potable water in the communities. And then interesting, at the very bottom, the Lake Paris. I just was wondering why that particular Lake Paris is just full all the time, and evidently it's the end of the state water project. So all the water you see going down that major California aqueduct, going down the Central Valley along Interstate 5, evidently it ends up down there at Lake Paris, and so they're the tail end, and they just seem to be full most of the time. But the rest of the state is just the reservoir levels are just all suffering because of the drought. Next slide. And then the regional water storage conditions, Lewis kind of touched upon them after hearing Steve Ritchie's comments. And this is just showing the last 2 months in August and September. And as you can see, as Lewis mentioned, actually it's a little bit lower than this. The total regional water storage at the very last row on the very far right is at 69, it was at 69% on September 1st. Here we are near the end of September. It sounded like Steve Ritchie said it was like 68.5%. So it's just dropping. But still, it's got quite a bit of water stored in there, but who knows, there could be some struggles based on a lawsuit between the regional water system, or San Francisco PUC, and then the state of California. Next slide. This graph is from a presentation from Mr. Ritchie to us at the water managers meeting in Bosca, and this happens to be the water use consumption for our part of the regional water system. So this is the peninsula area. And the red line is 2021, the blue line is 2013, and it kind of gives you a picture. The kind of dark blue line is 2020, so you can see that 2021, at least for the last few weeks, is below what was happening last year. So I think people are getting the message, but we haven't gotten near a 15% reduction from last year. Next slide. And then again, for Mr. Ritchie's presentation, these are total deliveries to the regional water system. And it shows the 5-year average, 2019, 2020, and 2021. And you can see it week by week. The week of when this was done in the latter part of August, they were delivering that week an average of 216 million gallons a day into the regional water system. Next slide. And this one is that same slide up above, but it's just 3 years. 2015, the really dry year in orange, 2020 in blue, and then where we're at in 2021. So just less data on there, but it just kind of gives you another picture. And then he shared with us, you know, how water conservation or water reduction is going when compared to 2020. So this is just information that started, they captured between the period of January 1st, 2021 and June 31st. And so you can see the San Francisco customers, they had reduced their consumption by 9.7% in that period of time. The wholesale customers, their use actually went up almost 3%. Now go down to the next slide, and that'll be for the last couple months, July 1 through August 31st. And you can see now the wholesale customers have gotten the message, and they're almost at 8%, and the San Francisco customers at 8% reduction in that 2-month period. So people are getting the message. We'll see what happens. And then the last slide on here is just the water that's available from the Tuolumne River to the regional water system. This year in 2021, only 57,000 acre feet was made available. In order to fill up the entire regional water system, we would need to have that 554,000 acre feet of water. And then just as comparison, in 2019, which was considered to be a wet year, the Tuolumne River, actually, we were able to take, or the regional water system was able to take 1.6, almost 1.7 million acre feet of water from the regional water system. So those are slides of the update. There hasn't been any message from the governor that we're aware that's changed anything yet. There are some things brewing between San Francisco and the state with regards to water rights. And we'll, as we hear more, we'll share more with the board, and we'll see what the picture looks like next month. Are there any questions of any of the charts and graphs that I shared with the board?
I was going to add, while board members think about their questions, that Ren and I have talked extensively and with staff. Monique is actually assisting right now while Jeanette's out. And we're going to build on the website for customers to at least have access to what the progress is. For these past 2 months, as you've seen here in the MPWD system, we're at about 8.2% of savings over 2020's use, okay? And that's pretty good, because a lot of the other agencies are at 2 and 3%, and you'll see even down in Candy's chart, if you've noticed in her report, you can see it. You can see it for these past 2 months, which is just amazing for these summer months, even though they weren't as warm, but they were warm. So anyway, that's good news, and we're going to continue to message for customers to continue to save, understanding that there could be changes at the governor's level if he decides to do any mandates.
Louis?
Yeah, just a quick comment that I am in full support, and I applaud our staff to keep our customers informed, even though, you know, some of them may not understand, you know, the charts and all of that. But the more we keep our customers informed, the easier it would be for them to accept that certain hardship, you know, has to be endured by everybody later on. The worst pushback that we get is when we hit people all of a sudden with something that they were not educated on. And you know, hopefully we won't have to do it, but in case we do, come January, when the 20% may hit, it is a very good idea to keep our customers as informed as possible and give them the information they need, so that they will be our partners in something like this. That will be a very difficult decision to make. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Louis. Any other comments? Well, I'll just add that I also appreciate this information. It's very, very helpful. The other thought I had was buried a little further back in our stuff is our water conservation report. I think that's under the operations reports, and I'm wondering if it might be better to hear that around this time when we hear about what's happening at the state. And Pammy already brought up what we're doing. So
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah, we'll remove that out of his report. You brought that up before, and we'll do that. We'll put it in with Rena's report for drought. Brian, that's a good idea.
great. Okay, thanks. Anything else? All right, where's the rain?
Exactly.
On to item 8A, management reports.
So you have my report in front of you. You all received with your deliveries of the agenda packet the submittals for the that were turned in from the executive search firms for the GM recruitment. So that'll be on next month's agenda. I will meet with the board president and vice president and just kind of get the direction that they want to go in for next month's recommendation for a contract. So very pleased that we got 5 submittals. You remember in the staff report there were 10 firms listed. 2 of them immediately got back to me after I sent it to them and said that they just didn't have the bandwidth. And then, you know, still to get 5 out of the remaining 8, that was pretty good. And then I will be giving an update, like I say here, on the organizational staffing. It's pretty much on target for all the board members and just so for Director Mostasisa's information. I'm going to bring back those charts, those graphs, you know, that show how many people we're going to be retiring and all that good stuff, just so that you see that they've actually retired a little bit earlier than I projected, but we are exactly on target for where we projected. So I want to give an update report on that in November. And that was it. That's all I had in my staff report. You can see next month's going to be packed. November, busy. And same with December. So I think I've laid out just, you know, what's coming to you and just wanted you to be prepared that there's just a lot to catch up on. And that's all.
Any questions? Matt.
Can I ask one last thing? I'm sorry, Matt, I didn't mean to interrupt you. The HIA meeting went really well, you know, this last month. So I'm putting the dates back on here again for you all. They're at Davino's. They are in person, and we are reporting. And they have asked that we give a report. We're kind of a hot topic in the community right now with delivering presentations. And I did want to just lastly say that, you know, we are on the City Council agenda next Tuesday, virtually, for a presentation that the city manager begged us to keep to 10 minutes, and we are going to do that. Rena did a really good job putting that together and scaling that back. So I just want to remind you that we are going to be doing that, and we are getting, you know, requests to, and we're fulfilling them. If people ask us, we are getting out there and making sure that we're present.
Matt, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to make a sort of a comment. I mean, one of the things that we're seeing at San Mateo is that if people can retire right now, they are. There's no like sticking around waiting to work. I want in a couple of years. I mean, it's if people are even close, it's happening. So we're having a fair amount of attrition, and unfortunately, we're not all enterprise funds, so not everybody can be replaced when they do retire. But just given financial impacts. But that has been the trend, at least in government, where I'm working, and that wouldn't surprise me to see it accelerate here, or as soon as people get close, you know, exercising the option, whether it's burnout, COVID fatigue, I don't know what, or work wasn't as fun as it used to be back when we could see each other, all the above. But that's been, it's not. I'm surprised we're on schedule. I'm surprised that you're not saying that it's happening a lot faster than you thought it would be.
Well, just so you be prepared, I do see some fatigue even in myself with all the changes in COVID. I'm being completely honest with you. It's exhausting, and then just keeping up with all the rules. I'm thankful for, you know, the district council, but you know, just all the different changes. I won't say that there's lost morale on staff, but I've had to deal with more personnel issues than normal. And quite frankly, I blame it on the fact that this tight-knit little family that we had, and the morale that you asked me, you know, 9 years ago to improve is still there. There's still, everybody here is doing the best they can and hardworking, but we miss our togetherness, right? We miss the things that used to bring us together and keep us, you know, that way. So we do the best we can. There are going to be 5 of us retiring in 2023, and it's going to be early 2023. there's going to be 2 actually next year, and then the 3 of us in early 2023. So we are pretty much on target. But I'm hoping that's probably it. If you remember, there was a span after that there would be a few more years, even though there are some age eligible folks here. You're right, Matt. They could turn in early. They could. It'll be interesting for the next general manager. They'll have some challenges with regard to that. But I did report to, and I am happy to report that we are using a blend of recruitment opportunities. So, you know, with the use of temporaries that we get from operational technical services, we just did a recruitment, and while we didn't get water system operators, we've got a couple of maintenance techs going through the background check. So we're getting out there. I'm contacting colleges. I'm trying to steal people. I mean, I'm doing everything that we can to try to find a way to get people hired here. And everybody's having the same issues. And I appreciate that you made those comments, because it's not uncommon, you know, that other management and HR departments are not having the same challenges.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Louis.
Tell me, we don't steal people, we poach. The first time I heard that word was many, many years ago. I used to work for the engineering department in Redwood City, and the fire department made me a very big offer. And the director of public works went over to the fire chief, and he goes like, "You don't poach on my department." That was the first time I heard poaching associated with people. I go like, okay, whatever.
I like it.
So anyway, I had a quick question for you, Tammy, on that, the required ethics training. Those we can just go in and log in on our own whenever we want to at this point, right?
Yeah, look on the screen. There's that, and it's in your package. There's that link. So it's the FPPC site. Fortunately, I did mine at the conference a couple of weeks ago. Thank God.
Yeah,
but you can use this. It's free.
I'm up here for sexual harassment training. Yeah. It's October. Okay.
Yeah, so I will be giving you more links for that too. I actually did it myself to go through the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, yeah, they have a free one now. So, and it's so different, and I just think it's time to do something different than JPIA and Hanson Bridget, no offense. So this one will offer you that opportunity, because even Matt made a comment last time, I think when we did it, it's like, it's always from JPIA's perspective. Remember, Matt, when we did that training, it's like, they don't want any liability. So I thought that DFEH did a good job. So I will be sending that link out, and I just noticed you are.
Yeah, if you don't mind, especially me, because I know I don't want to, I'm going to be out of town in October for a couple of weeks, and I don't want to miss that deadline.
And it's 2 hours, so it times you as you go along, right? So it doesn't, like me, when I do the FPPC, I always got to do the extra 20 minutes, because even though I try so hard to do it in 2 hours, I never do. I somehow read too fast. So this one, it literally lasts 2 hours, so you don't have to worry about making it up. And it prints or provides you with the certificate that you can send into Candy right at the end of it. So I'll be happy to send that to everybody. Okay.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Any other comments for Tammy or questions? Nope, let's move on. Administrative Services.
Yes, I just wanted to do an update on the meeting that we had with redistricting partners regarding the zone-based elections. We had a meeting with them today, and they did an analysis of our legacy data set of information prior to receiving the data that they just received yesterday, that is the current data. And they determined from the legacy set that there were 29,023 people in our district, which means each grouping would have about 5805 in each group. From the legacy data set, they told us we have 21.3% Asian population, 1.4% African American population, and 10.5% Latinos, but they are not in any particular region or of the district. So we will have more ability to help determine how to divide up the district. It could be based on community of interest or whatever else we can come up with that makes good sense. And they will have 3 drafts for us by October 12th. and we are going to review them as a staff and circle back with them on Thursday, October 14th. Then they will have the drafts updated with what we suggest, and they will then present those to the board at the October meeting. Once they get your input from the board meeting, they will do another iteration, which will then be presented at the January 22 board meeting. So that way you'll be able to see something prior to it going to the public. I mean, it is in the public, but people won't have been noticed about it being in the public in October. And that's all I have.
That was a request from Kirk and Brian that, you know, they wanted to, would the board be able to see something before the public hearing, the first one in January? And so Candy followed up with the consulting team, and these visualizations, I don't know that there'll be 3 of them, but there may be, they're going to have those ready so that you at least just see a concept of what they can look like. Okay, doesn't mean they're going to be the final ones, and then based on what your input might be, those will be the ones, like Candy said, would come back in January. So I appreciate that you followed up with them, Candy, and Kirk and Brian, I hope that will satisfy what you guys asked for during the agenda review, so that we at least get the board like a progress report and they can see what that's going to look like for them.
Sounds good to me. Matt, did you have a question? Comment?
Yeah, actually, more kind of a comment. So Redistricting Partners is actually also doing the San Mateo redistricting right now. And all I can say is, just watching that even from the inside, I'm thankful we're not going through it on the timeline that San Mateo is having to deal with it. But they did do a really interesting interactive website where you can, as a member of the public, go on, and I don't know how much it costs, and I'm not suggesting, but if people are interested in seeing it as an option, you can actually go on to the website and select different areas, and it will tabulate sort of the demographics for your different zones, and you can save options even as an interactive tool that City of San Mateo has made available to the public to get public input on sort of preferred elections districts and whatnot. And it can cut it by pretty much anything in the American Community Survey, so the ACS, which is kind of what it's based on. Anyway, so if staff or other board members want to go look, I think they'll be probably advertised front and center on the City of San Mateo website. It is a pretty interesting tool.
Yes, we actually talked about that with them, and they had recommended, because we're so small, that it really is not something that we would do. So we opted not to add that to our cost. And they just didn't think it would. I mean, they worked with other districts our size and larger, but not that much larger, and they said that it really didn't add to anything.
And thank you for bringing up, Matt, about the compressed schedule, because I think I reported last month that the city of Belmont got shanked, as Ashton likes to call it. And so they're now going through the process, having to pay the 30 grand and doing it in a compressed timeline as well. So we're going to actually be probably out in front of them, because they got an extension or something, is what he said. So we'll actually probably be out in front of them in January.
Yeah, the plaintiff didn't negotiate an extension with San Mateo, so they were talking about delaying it, and they couldn't reach terms. So, or at least they didn't get the full extension that they were looking for. So it ended up they're super accelerated. They're dealing with the 90 days.
All right. Any other questions for Candy? Great. Let's move on to operations.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to just kind of start out by saying we're ready here very soon to do the first leg of our water main assessment, the pipeline from the tunnels pump station up to the hallmark. And I wanted to throw out to the board members if any of you might be interested. And so right now, the week of October 4th is when the consulting team is going to be here, and the actual 2 days when they're going to actually open up the pipeline and insert their tools are going to be Tuesday, October 5th. And Thursday, October 7th. So if you're interested in watching this technology work, let me know, and we'll help you get out there so you can watch how this technology works. In regards to operations, on page 72, Tammy, the next page, on the very top, near the top, I wanted just to kind of point out there was one one project thing we did on 2636 Sequoia Drive. We were working to put up a new service for a customer, and they happened to be in the Zone 3 area where they're close to the Decoven tanks, and so the water pressure to their house was just on the cusp of not working for fire protection. So typically what we do when it gets kind of low, we know that the backflow device is required in there, and the reduced pressure principal devices typically have a large head loss through them. So what we'll do is we'll put in a larger water service, so you'll have the volume, and hopefully that will overcome, so to speak, the backflow device. In this case, it didn't help. So we said, okay, well, the next best thing to probably do is they're right next to Zone 4, which is a much higher pressure zone. And we put in a small service line, a 4-inch line, PVC line, extended a couple hundred feet down Sequoia Drive off of the neighbor street there. And I can't think of top it off my head. But what was interesting is we put the water line like we've always done. Didn't have any issues. The pipeline before we put it in there looked nice and clean and so on. And when the guys went to do a back T sample, the first sample came back positive. What the heck happened? So they flushed the line. They put some disinfectant in there again, a little bit higher level of disinfectant in there, let it sit for a little bit longer. Took another back T sample, and keep in mind that when you do a back T sample, it takes at least 48 hours before you get some kind of reading as to whether or not you're going to pass. Well, it failed again. So Michael and I were talking about saying, okay, so what did we do wrong here? And so this happened a couple more times. In the meantime, the homeowner saying, well, when are you guys going to have my fire service to? And we were working with him just to try and keep him happy while we tried to figure out what happened with this particular pipeline. We were thinking maybe a rodent or something got in the pipeline. So we spent $500 and got a little video camera that's on a cable and literally went into the line. Didn't see anything in the line other than we could see at the very top of the pipe, for pretty much the entire length of the pipe, there was this light brown film. I'm going to call it a biofilm in there. Don't know how it got in there other than, from just thinking about what we did. We used a fire hose, a 2.5-inch fire hose here that we've used in the past for filling up water lines before we test them for back T. And the only thing that we can think of is that fire hose was contaminated. It hadn't been probably dried out properly, or maybe it had some sort of biofilm in it, and it imparted that biofilm when we used it to fill the water line. So the guys came up with a creative tool. They talked with some of the water agencies around us and said, hey, what do you guys do? And everybody says, well, we typically don't have this problem, and if we do, we just flush the heck out of it. That seems to solve it. Well, we tried, that didn't work. So the guys came up with a creative solution. They actually bought a couple of mop heads and created a safe zone on either end of the pipeline so you wouldn't contaminate anymore with some plastic liner in there. They got some large tubs that people might use in their garage for storage and created a really heavy chlorine concentration that they put the mop head in, and then they also put in a drag line and connected to the mop heads, and they literally pulled these mop heads back and forth through that water line. I think Michael said they ended up going about 8 times. And then finally, when they didn't get any more biofilm on the mop head, then they flushed the line real good, put it back together again, pressure tested to make sure it didn't cause any problems or leaks with it, and then took a water sample, and this time it finally passed. So again, the only thing that we can think of is that water hose, that 2.5-inch fire hose, had some sort of biofilm or something in it that was brought into the water, introduced into the water line. So it made us think about how we go about doing this, and the guys are working on a procedure so that we hopefully minimize or mitigate having to go through this again, because it was just a lot of time and effort to try and figure out what happened before we figured out it's probably related to a 2.5-inch water line. So I thought it was interesting to share with the board members. In terms of just other operations, on page 74, just to look at our work with developers. We're working with 67 development projects in and around the community. You see that there's 13 mixed-use commercial multifamily. A new curveball or new wrinkle that's coming at us is the ability for people to build auxiliary dwelling units on their properties. So Brett and I have been working with Tammy, and we're going to be working with the district council's office to come up with something related to that. There are laws for auxiliary dwellings on properties, but we've got to try and make them fit within how we operate. And also it's going to be a part of our discussion with our rate study team and our capacity charge team. The last thing with regards to the operations, I think that's all I wanted to share, but if you go to page 77, it's just an update on the El Camino construction project, the capital project, right here, Tammy, on the bottom of it, up 77 right there. Progress payment number 4. You see it there at the end of August, Mitchell Engineering, they're 56% done with the construction of that project. We've paid them a little over almost $1.2 million. I just saw today that we received the information from the San Francisco PUC lab that the back T samples for the first segment of the water line pass. So that's good for them. Now they're going to be hooking up the services for the customers along El Camino from Ruth Avenue to Davy Glen. And I think they're about ready to sample, pressure test, and then sample the last segment, which is from the 500 block of El Camino to Middle Road. And then what they're working on right now is actually the middle section, which is probably the hardest one, because in this section, they've got to construct a temporary water service while they're putting in the water line because of the food service industry, or the restaurants there along that segment of the capital project. And the remainder of this, they're just a series of pictures of what's going on in that particular project. And you've seen some similar ones before that we've shared. So next month, we'll see how far Mitchell Engineering is with the project. Their tentative construction date, where when construction ends, is the first part of November. The last thing I wanted to share is beginning on page 85, and it's just a report. And it's as President Schmidt mentioned, maybe we'll move this up next month if we provide this in the water conservation. But I asked Monique to just kind of give an update on, since we've got the voluntary conservation efforts going on there, are people asking questions about our water conservation programs and maybe some rebate programs? So I had her take a look at that, and that's what she's provided here. And so you'll see kind of in the middle of the page, the rain barrels. We haven't had a lot of requests for any rain barrels, but the lawn be gone is something that we've gotten some interest in. And I think part of it is because we've increased that rebate from $2 a square foot to $4 a square foot. And I think I just saw an email from Tammy yesterday that San Mateo County is thinking about adding maybe as much as $1 a square foot to that lawn be gone number.
That's right.
So we've got 4 applications in process now, and we've got a large homeowner association off of Hallmark. It's a 15,000 square foot lawn area that we're working with them to see if we can get them to get rid of their lawn through the lawn be gone process. So that's a little better than what we've seen in the past. And then with regards to the irrigation controllers, it's so far in this fiscal year since July, we've only had 3 people ask for the rebate codes, where during the entire fiscal year 21, we had 44 people get the rebate codes and get a free irrigation controller. And then the last thing that Monique provided some information on is just some irrigation hardware. There's some high efficiency sprinklers out there that, you can actually get some of those paid for, but I don't think we've had anybody apply for anything yet. So I just thought it might be interesting to see, how the community is making use of our rebate programs that we have for water conservation. And again, we're talking about trying to reach out to our customers there to make them aware of if they're not, and to remind them that we have ways for them to conserve water as we try and make sure that we've got water for next year. But let's just hope it rains, right? Are there any questions from the board members about anything in the operations report for the month?
Kirk.
Yeah, I had a question on the lawn be gone, looking at that number and going, wow, $60,000 seems like a big rebate. And it represents, if my back of an envelope calculations right, it's something like what they would have spent on water for the next 15 years. So my question was more, it sounds like a lot of money, but is there an actual contract with these property owners that prevents them from going back at some point and reinstalling a lawn?
Monique?
Well, so I was going to jump in first. Okay, so this is the first time we've ever gotten one this large. So our intention is to bring a budget amendment next year because we only have 20,000 budgeted for Long Begone. Okay. It's a project that actually they've reached out to us before when with Jeanette, and now they've just come and they have to have plans. They have to have their before. It's very, very detailed what they have to do. And then it has to be inspected throughout. And we actually have a firm that we use because this program goes through BOSCA and through the Long Begone program. It's just that we fund it. So it is pretty detailed with regard to what results in their final project. And then Monique, I was going to let you add if there was anything I might have left out.
There is an application process, and it does have the conditions, the terms and conditions, and all of that information on what the requirements are. And it is a pretty rigorous program. So I can't remember exactly what the details are. I think it says that they have to maintain the new landscaping for 5 years, unless it changes property owners. But this is an HOA, so it's not going to change property owners.
Okay. But if there's nothing that requires us or no program that we have to monitor these types of rebate locations going forward.
No, but that's a good point, though. We'll have to ask Jeanette because I'm not sure if there is follow-up. Monique, do you know after talking with Bosca and the inspector?
The application process does provide them with the notice that the district can monitor it, and if they find, I think that you can require them to pay back the rebate if they undo what they were rebated for.
Okay.
I can look into it, but I don't know all the specifics off the top of my head, but that's what I recall.
We can bring that back, Kirk, because I get where you're going. It's kind of like if they're larger like this, maybe there's a longer term. Maybe it's not 5 years, maybe it's 10 years. And that, we'll bring back what our inspection program is and the follow-up that we do after they've been finally inspected and approved.
Anything else, Kirk?
Brian, can I jump in real quick?
No, that was it.
Yeah, Juven wants to jump in and then we'll go to Lewis.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought the directors were done. Oh, wait, sorry.
Okay, Lewis.
Fine. Okay, good. All I was going to say is while you're double checking this, I know you may not have the answers, but HOA may still remain, but the board of the HOA will change. So could you please look into that as well? Because you may have a new board and they are going to say, you know what, the old board maybe agreed to this, but the new board does not want to agree to it. So to Kirk's point, I think because it's so much money that they cannot be putting back, go back to the way they were before. At least they break even with their normal usage of that space or that area of lawn. So when you're looking into when they can change and when they can go back, HOA changes their board, and that could be a loophole in the system as well. So please look into that as well.
Certainly.
I do have the information right here if you want me to read it to you.
If it's brief, sure.
Yeah, it's brief. So the rebate term is long conversion projects must be completed within 4 months, and then the lasting water savings, the converted area must remain converted for at least 3 years following receipt of the rebate. An applicant may be charged for some or all of the rebate amount at the discretion of the participating BOSCA member agency if the applicant does not maintain the converted area in conversion. Notwithstanding the foregoing, this requirement is void upon transfer of ownership.
So I hear at least 3 years, so that means that it could be more. So I think maybe that's what we talk about internally and bring back. than in some of these with these larger areas and these larger investments by the district that we make it longer term.
Sure.
Just add for what it's worth that Valley Water paid for quite a few of these things, and I did not hear very much of an issue of people going back on these conversions. They seem to be pretty popular, and it'd also be kind of expensive for someone to tear out their landscaping and put in lawn. But yeah, I'm sure we could look into that. Kirk, are you done?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Great. Yeah, no, I was also glad to see the decision finalized to bump up to $4 a square foot. And that'd be great if San Mateo County kicks in as well. All right, so are we done? Oh, Jubin, I'm sorry, you had something you wanted to add.
Just real quick, I wanted to just go back to the El Camino project that Rena talked about, and it's a testament to the hard work, I think, of the designer, hydroscience, the district staff, everybody involved with this, that we've had one complaint throughout that project. And to be quite honest, it's probably one of the most complicated projects that we've put together here at the district, with all the moving parts, with all the customers out there, and working with the customers, working with the contractor and the construction management team and the operations staff. Everybody came together, and I know we've all had on the staff level just nightmare scenarios for this project, and so far, knock on wood, it's gone really well with one complaint. I wanted to just pass that along, because we speak very shortly, and it's going really well, and it could go sideways really quickly, but it's a very complicated project, and a lot of planning went into it, and I think it's a testament again to our construction management team out there that they're holding this project steady and as she goes. So just wanted to pass it along.
Thank you. Okay, if we're ready, I think we're on to financial reports.
Yes, we can skip over. I just wanted to make sure.
Hold on. Stephen, did you want to give your report, or was that your report? Sorry.
No, I didn't know where. Yeah, I didn't know where I was.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Candy. I just wasn't sure.
Sorry about that. Yeah, 2 active projects right now. The Harbor Boulevard water main project. There's some district, just staffing wise for the district, didn't quite line up with how the submittals were lined up. So we've rearranged the schedule just a bit, so to make that project a little bit more efficient as far as design goes. But it is being designed, it's on budget, and new schedule will be provided to the general manager here shortly. The Hastings Vine Belmont Canyon water main project is out to bid. We had a pre-bid meeting yesterday, and yesterday. Sorry, the days are all getting jumbled up here. We had 8 eligible bidders show up for the pre-bid, which is a pretty good number for a water main project. And at this time, there's a considerable amount of supply chain issues with the construction supplies, materials, essentially. So we're trying to work with contractors to give them the ability to bid the project and be flexible and be as flexible as possible, yet maintaining the schedule that we need to spend this money for the COP dollars that we have. I also wanted to just point out at this point, the budget, we're approximately $35,000 under budget. When we award the project for construction, either next month or depending on if the contractors want a little bit more time in November, we'll provide a full report on the design expenditures of the project. So most of the projects come in a bit under budget. It's pretty rare for us to ask for more money as we did with the Decoman project. I think that's about it for these 2 guys.
Thanks, Stephen. Any questions? Okay. Now maybe we're on to financial reports.
Great. So I provided both the July financial report and the August financial report. So if you go to page 93, that's the August one. And you can see that our target percentage for the month, or for the 2 months, it was 17%. And we are 3.9% over at 20.9% on revenues, and we're under 1.8% for expenses. So that's good. And our debt ratio is 2.62, so we're in good shape. And that's it. Any questions?
Any questions? Oh, okay. Thanks, Candy. The annual reimbursements. That's AP3.
This is the annual report that Candy puts together with regard to employee reimbursements that are over $100. This is in accordance with government code section that's listed here on the staff report. And for the fiscal year that ended June 30th of 2021, these are the reports. These are the reported actions. It's just one page because there wasn't a whole lot of activity during COVID.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay, any questions, comments? Great. Let's move on to director reports. Let's go across my screen. Kathy.
I don't have any other reports other than I just want to thank Tammy and Candy for walking me through everything, that huge data dump, and just answering my questions, and just overall being really supportive and welcoming. So I really appreciate that.
Great to hear. Thanks. Kirk.
Yeah, I just wanted to report that I attended the first in-person HIA meeting with Tammy this month, and it was pretty well attended. And it's amazing how many projects the city of Belmont and the city of San Carlos had to talk about. And a lot of them were some fairly big projects. It looks like the biotech stuff in San Carlos is going to continue to run its course for several years. So it's hard to tell how many industrial areas down there are going to convert going forward. Fortunately, not all of them are in our jurisdiction, so we may not make that big a difference to us. That was it.
Okay, thanks, Kirk. Lewis.
Yes, thank you. The only thing that I want to add is that I attended the virtual tour of the Hetch Hetchy system, the San Francisco PUC, the Hetch Hetchy, all the way from the mountains all the way to Harry Tracy. And it was a very, very well done virtual tour. It was done in 2 sessions. One was yesterday, and the other one was today. And each session were almost 2 hours each. But it was very, very well made, and I hope that we could do it at least annually, where we need to get reminded, where the water comes from, a lot of the hydro energy, the treatment of the water, and all that. It's very, very interesting. And I've done it in person, and I was amazed at virtually how descriptive it was, even though we were not seeing it in person. But it was also very well done. Steve Ritchie did a very good job in leading us through the tour of the water system, from the mountains all the way to San Francisco. So that's it. Thank you.
I agree with you, Lewis. I was just going to jump in. I actually made a comment that it should be made available every year. I too, early on, went on the in-person tour. It was morbidly hot. It was like 102 degrees up there. And it's so nice to have the networking and stay in the cabin and do the hikes and all of that. But there were so many things I learned, and I've been here 9 years, just because they were able to go out and capture videos and do drone flyovers and all of that. And they captured almost every segment of the regional water system, which just the size and complexity of it still amazes me, even after 9 years of working here. So
Yeah.
I agree with you, Lewis. I hope they do make it available every year.
And the way they mixed the tour itself with the directors that are in charge of the certain segments of the pipeline, and they bring them on video, it was very, very well done. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lewis. Matt.
Nothing to report, although I just want to this notion that not notion, the issue that Brenna brought up about ADUs is certainly something that is going to be a hot topic going forward. I mean, the laws, as I understand it, don't allow us to charge connection fees and collect some of the capital costs. But so I'd be interested as we bring that forward, understanding you know, how which means we pick up a lot of that on rates. So there are laws restricting our ability to capture costs, and it's basically all indoor demand that's being added, which is almost zero opportunity for potential future conservation cutbacks. So when you look at an individual dwelling unit, you're adding an ADU on it, you're adding 1, 2, however many people. It's all demand and no conservation potential. So it's going to make the future interesting as more and more of those get built. So I think a conversation for us to have as that grows in Belmont. I don't know what the appetite here in Belmont is. We're obviously not the land use authority. We don't control the building permits or how many have been pulled, but I know in 3 years it went from 4 to over 100 building permits pulled for ADUs in San Mateo. So that's sort of 100 housing unit development, you know, having kind of scattered throughout the city every year. Not a small amount of water.
Well, and to add on to that, correct me, Julie, if I'm wrong, with the passage of SB 9 and the fact that
I was going to say that
yeah,
SB 9, SB 10, both of them.
Yeah, the SFR is going
me too. I want to talk about this.
Yeah, to duplexes and quads and tri. So believe me, your staff, we're on this with district council.
Excellent.
And this includes the ADU discussion, because with Monique, we're working on the update and revisions to, and we've already had part 1 with district council. So we will be discussing this soon to bring back that topic, okay? Because I say that as a visionary, those will all be able to be sold off soon too. Those granny units, those ADUs, those triplexes, duplexes, you'll start seeing lot splits, and you'll start being able to see people sell them off just like a mixed family unit. Okay, so wholeheartedly agree with you, Matt, that, you know, we're the water district. We should be able to manage water, and we can't do that if our hands are tied and we're restricted even with the developments. But I will say that there are a few owners that come in. There's been a few who absolutely say, we don't care how much it costs, we want to pay for a meter, and we're selling them. We're selling the connections for the ADUs. Okay, we don't force it, but when the owner demands it because they don't want to be billed for their tenants' usage, we're putting it in. And those are usually separate units, which I promise you, stay tuned in the next dozen years, if not sooner, those will start being lot split and sold off.
If I may, but also, Tammy, SB 9 and SB 10, I mean, we're talking from one single family dwelling to 4-plex, okay? SB 9 will have a 4-plex, not just an ADU.
No, my son lives in San Jose in a house, and he lives in the efficiency. It has 6 units. He lives in the 500 square foot efficiency. So there's 5 other households living in this one big, large house in San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. It's going to go on. It's going to explode to more than quadplexes.
Exactly. That's how they're going to solve the housing shortage. So we think. All right.
We're very much looking forward to the discussion with you too. We really are. It'll help solve issues with people out there who like to really criticize the district for our high fees, or, oh my God, you're coming after us. That's not ever our intent. Our intent is to ensure that there's adequate water supply. So that's usually the message that we turn around and say, but we're looking forward to having the talk with you guys.
Should be interesting. Matt, are you all set?
Oh, I'm set. Thanks.
Okay. All right. I don't really have anything urgent to report, so we'll save it for next time. Thanks for everyone. 2 months off and got through this. And oh wait, communications.
There are none from staff, but I was just going to tell you that I too went on the tour, and like I said, it was excellent. But I was also going to say that last month, or I'm sorry, in July, the topic came up, and we said we'd bring it back with regard to arbitrage, the potential for arbitrage on our 2016 COPs. We had a really great team meeting with our municipal finance team, and I won't belabor it because we're going to bring it back next month. Stay tuned. We're going to have a very detailed progress report. We came up with a solution, and we will be asking for some board direction and action at next month's board meeting.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Well, I think we are set. Thanks, everyone. Matt.
Nope, I was going to say good night. That was it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you all.
y'all. Sorry for my camera snafu this evening, but I appreciate it.
No worries.
Not a problem.
Bye,
All right.
everybody.
Take care. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, we're
Good night.
adjourned.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Take care.